Athlete Builder back at it in the library. Jim Beebe, my teammate Lucas Lorian. We got Jeremy Hartman here today. Couple announcements right off the bat. We're in pink. So this episode is going to launch soon, and it's going to be in October. But this coming Saturday, and this when you hear this, it will have already occurred, but that's okay. Breast cancer is a big thing in October. It's a big thing at our gym. We do an event called Unbreakable Boobs, raise over $250,000. This is our 12th year, so 12 years total. It's been just growing exponentially. We pump all the money back into the community, helping out with breast cancer. It's 1 in 7 women are affected. Everyone knows someone, people in my family, people in my gym. So we'll go on our website. You can go on the podcast links. There'll be a link there for accessing the foundation. Anything helps. So keep that in mind, breast cancer and unbreakable boobs. Number 2, my guy, Lucas Lorian, just competed over in Ohio, the great state of Ohio, in weightlifting. So the guy that won last year in bodybuilding put the weight back on, got back in the singlet, and went back to weightlifting. Now, he's qualified for the Arnold before. He's qualified for the Arnold in powerlifting, collegiate nationals. But now he's back in weightlifting, so that's snatch and clean and jerk. Snatch at a body weight of, 183 at weigh-ins. He went 3 for 3 and snatched 118, which is 259. And then he came back and cleaned 145, which is 319 pounds for a 578 total. Qualified for AO1. So congratulations, Lucas. Nice job. Well done. Now we got
Thanks,
Jeremy
man.
Hartman on today. No stranger to the podium, right? 6-time champ, USA powerlifting. Also qualified for Worlds. Ended up in the podium there. He's been, I want to say, 16, 17 years high school strength coach, also in the great state of Ohio, but had to come to Indiana and fix things around here, built some things from scratch, and now continues to grow and evolve. Now he has his own facility set up, Hartman Performance Training. Make sure I got that right. And so he's training athletes, whether it's sports performance, overall performance for just being better athletes, but also powerlifting and just kind of being badasses. So you'll see him traveling everywhere. When I say everywhere, I know that last year as coach of the year, and this year he has his own athlete as athlete of the year. He's still making time. He's going to be speaking at Swiss with Dr. Ken Kinnikin, and then Underground Strength with Zach, who we had on the show a little while back, having his summit, and he's one of the speakers there. He's been a speaker with Elite FTS, episode 388. So Jeremy's been making the rounds, making an impact. He can talk all things athletics for student athletes, just getting strong, and he lives it and teaches it. So you can do both. And Jeremy, we are thrilled to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, Jim, I appreciate you having me and welcoming me into your gym before to see your Highland games, the powerlifting stuff you got going on, and the invite to go over and train. So thank you very much.
For sure. Right off the bat, 3 true or false questions, and I don't need an example or any color to it. It's just true or false. All right.
Okay.
In the sport of powerlifting, sumo deadlift is cheating.
False.
My man. All right. True or false? High school kids need more skill work and less lifting.
Need more skill work. I need way more lifting.
Way more lifting. All right. And then true or false? West Side Barbell, West Side Against the World is the greatest documentary ever created.
True, but it didn't tell everything since I was around it for over 10 years down there. I think they could have done a better job really telling a little bit more of the history and a little bit more behind the scenes stuff, but it is one of the greatest ones, yes.
So we have a talker. I said just true or false, and he still gave some color on that last one, right? Just can't do it.
No, talk about kids and they need more strength. Come on, man. I got to explain a little bit.
You get coaches a microphone, and they just start talking and talking. I'm absolutely guilty of that. So the first real question, though, with all the speaking, and you travel nationally and internationally for your athletes, and you've been a number of places, and this is all coming up here in the fourth quarter alone, these next 2 summits. So how are you fitting it all in with the time?
Yeah, you know what? This was the first year I've been teaching since 2006. I went full-time private now. I just had enough people with my online platform, my in-person, enough with the seminars and everything. So I decided to, make the go at this full-time. That's what I want to do, is work with motivated people, and people really want to better themselves 100% full time. Still get all my high school athletes, my middle school kids, college kids, professional, everyone. But this is what I wanted to do. And with all these opportunities, one of those things in life, Jim, you had the same thing with your story. We just couldn't pass it up, and we had to go forward with it.
I was just driving down to Vanderbilt this weekend. My son's playing for Ball State, and they played at Vanderbilt. And I stopped by in Louisville because one of the guys out of my gym, Mark Clevenger, he played at DePaul, but he also created Louisville Strongman. So he kind of created that little niche down there. And he's been out, coached at my gym. We know him for a while, and great family. And he knows my son Jack, so I stayed there Friday night, and we're heading down there Saturday morning to Vanderbilt. And we're talking about our upbringing, and his dad didn't really push him or give him any guidance. Funny thing about Mark, he played college football having never played a sport in his life. He played college football at DePaul, having never played a sport in his life, got cut all the time, right? And when I asked my dad, how do you get better at sports or stronger, he says, I don't know, just push-ups. And we're like, well, how did we get here where we know some things? We're not like top of the Mount Rushmore, but with no real background and no real help, at least from our leadership in our family. And what I loved right here when I'm in this little bio, I think I'm one of the most blessed athletes of all time, as I had a coach start strength and conditioning with me as far back as 6th grade. Man, talk about that experience and what a leg up. How many years you're ahead of people because of that advantage, that extra work that you got in at an early age.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I don't want to say that guy's name is Mr. Gary Congen. I still call him Mr. Congen to this day. What he did for me is 100% of the reason why I do what I do today, to mostly help kids, but I have a lot of other people, adults, younger kids, younger athletes in there, because that man changed my life. He's still a mentor in my life today. I still see advice that I'm 41 years old. I still call him up when there's tough decisions. I want his input, or when I have questions about certain things, the guy was there for me. So I think I'm one of the blessed athletes of all time. He never charged us or anything. He was my youth football coach, and he was starting a wrestling program, and with that comes the strength conditioning. He trained his son, who was a very good high school wrestler, also a college All-American wrestler, and he was getting ready to train his younger son. And so he, invited me out to train with 4 other guys, and we started strength training right away. We started physical conditioning, physical strength training. I mean, that was the summer going into my 6th grade year, so I had all that time. And for 3 years, we did Jim, before they made sleds, he was a metal fabricator, and I actually worked at his metal shop for several summers. He had built sleds back then, before they were even prowlers. I think he had one of the original ones. I wish he would have patented it. But I was doing off-the-wall wrestling, conditioning, calisthenic training, and that man built, you see, 3 years of that for a young athlete, through that year-round, multiple times training, plus the wrestling program itself, too. I mean, there was a reason why my body ate up the barbell lifts when I got into high school. Because 3 years of GPP training like that, you can't replace that. I don't care who you are. It was multiple times, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week whenever we didn't have regular wrestling going on, or if it was our off season, or we didn't have tournaments scheduled. But yeah, the reason he did that is the reason why I pay back to the kids and the people I train today was because of that man. He stayed with me through the whole time. That led on to high school lifting, where I got with Vic Boinovich, whose sons I actually help strength coach now. They're both wrestling at the University of Iowa. So in addition to their regular strength training, I also help them as well on the side. Again, it's part of paying back what Vic did for me. And he introduced me to barbell lifts, and my lifts just took off. And I didn't really at the time understand why I was making such good progress compared to everybody else around me. But 3 years of that GPP work, general physical preparation work that I had, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, going all the way until I learned the barbell lifts from Vic, it just tremendously blew me up, and it hit my speed, it hit my confidence. Obviously, my wrestling strength was huge. It just did so much on so many levels that I knew early on that I wanted to change people's lives the way they go. Those guys changed mine.
You can look in the books and you can look in the movies, and it's everywhere. Even like the most recent Creed series, when they're fighting Drago's son, he's always carrying stuff. These guys are carrying rocks or carrying hay bales. They say that farm boy strength. You spend those years carrying stuff, so you're carrying things, so your cardiovascular system's working. But you're not just doing body weight stuff. You're carrying all this load. So if you're just always doing your conditioning with a sled, or if you're always doing conditioning but there's load, all your systems are getting better. And then you teach them some technique with a bar. Now it's like a joke. You're like, that kid's so raw strength because he's been building it for so long. The base is so high. It's so much easier with that barbell. Then also they have that conditioning. They don't need to wait 3 or 4 minutes in between sets to keep hitting their accessories. They can go on the minute or every 90 seconds because their heart rate's already back down. They're ready to go. So they get more volume in that way because they get more sets and reps. So with that as the base, being so dense, man, what an advantage. Sleds all the time. Sun
Yep.
up, sun down. That's a great tool, that guy. He built those sleds for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. He built them. There's pictures of us in his backyard pushing up an incline. He used to take us to
Mm.
the features of the high school. We'd run with weights in our hands. We did farmer runs, farmer walks back in the day. Everything, Jim, like you said, had some type of load. We were running. We had backpacks with weights on our hands. This guy was light years ahead of everybody else. And of course, he got criticized too. You're going to hurt these kids. You're going to stunt their growth. I mean, I can't believe it's 2024 and we still have this, Lucas, the same junk that's still out there being strength coaches. But I ended up being the tallest one in my entire family. Same thing with the kids that I trained when I was younger. But it was just amazing what a base that built. And like I said, I couldn't realize like the gains I was making. Even some of my coaches were like, well, how are you making these gains? I'm like, I just didn't know. I knew, but I didn't quite understand. So I got in the science of it later on.
Mm. Man, if there's one tool I tell parents to do or get, it's just a sled. There's so much you can do with it, and you don't need to be that. Honestly, thankfully for me, you don't need to be that intelligent. There's a lot of technique involved with the barbell, but with the sled, you can just lean forward and push or walk backwards. So you
Yes.
can get better and not even be that bright. Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Throw some, get it,
Um.
throw some weight on it. You can attach a rope to it, pull it, Jim. I mean, like you
Ah.
said, it's so easy to get going. There's really no technique into it. Just push, pull it, drag it, whatever you can do on there. And man, you're going to get so much better, especially as a young athlete.
Yep. I'm so jealous. Did I see correctly? You got two lifters going to Iceland next
Yeah.
in
So
November.
Jared Martin. Yeah. I've been fortunate to have Jared for over 10 years. He worked with Ed Cohen a lot. Ed's still a good part of his life. And Jared I've had for over 10 years. He was the first, he holds the raw, drug-free world record squat walked out, 866 pounds. And then he's the
Mm.
first man out of any federation in powerlifting in the 275-pound weight class to squat 1,003 in single-ply gear drug-free. So not only does he have the raw all-time world record squat, 866, now he squatted 1,003. This is all at 275-pound body weight, 2-hour weigh-ins. And he was able to qualify, like I said, for the World Championships. We easily won the Nationals. You got a guy squatting like that, and he deadlifts over 800 raw too on a stiff bar. No deadlift bars, no specialty bars. He pulled 822 on a second attempt for me raw. And he's got a very good bench press. I'm still working with him on the bench press shirt, but we're getting close to 700-pound bench press.
Mm.
He was just in my gym this last week. He came down, drive about a 3-hour drive. Works from home, so we work from home every day, and we got him training. He just hit 918 for a double in the squat, and then he just hit 690 to a one board on the bench press. Because I'm still working with him on the bench press shirt, how to get that correct. And then Mary Jane was my other lifter too. She's the heavyweight as well. She's competing in single ply again. She top U.S. girl right now. She was another one that I met her through another friend of mine, local Center Grove person. She did some fitness stuff, but she really wanted to strength train, and it's taken me several years. I had to break a lot of habits, Jim. She was injured when she came in, squatting 3 times heavy, didn't know any better, had the body coach. So I had to fix a lot of stuff, get her healthy first, which took like 6 months. And then she's taken off over the last 3 years. She went from local meets, Lucas, to like, you are going to the Arnold, going to nationals. And now, we went out for the world team trials. She qualified for worlds. So I have the top female heavyweight and also have the top male heavyweight right now.
That's awesome. So consistent results. It's different. It's not just men. It's not just women. It's both. It's both, and it's raw and equipped lifters. And you talk about having to fix some problems. Not that, humbly, I consistently make mistakes week in, week out with my athletes or with programming or both. Sometimes you just see these folks and you got to just scratch your head. One of my athletes was just traveling on vacation, popped into a gym, was going to do the CrossFit class there, and they're lifting first, which is great, love that. And it's squat, and they're going on the minute doubles for they start at 85%, and then at 95%. They're doing 8 sets, and they're just going up a little bit each time. I'm like that volume at that percentage is so close to injury. There's so much risk. So when you say you have to undo all these bad habits, I'm like, oh my God, 10, 12, 16 reps all around 90% with a 40 second rest. Insane. Insane idea.
Yeah.
So
Well,
hopefully everyone's maxes were much higher, and those that actually did wrong, or they just got lucky that day and didn't kill anybody.
well, two things on that one, Jim. Just look at Prilipin's chart. It'll give you an idea
Right
of what you
there.
should be doing. Yeah.
It's right there. I don't need
Yeah.
to know anything. It's someone else already figured it out for me. All I got to do is copy those smart guys. Right?
Yeah. But I tell you, Jim, it's when you're training, especially when you got a guy like Jared and Mary Jane, when you start poking at 90%, I believe above 90%, especially in the power lifts, is its own training method. And you can only be in that zone for so long. And when I
Mm-hmm.
poke the bear with Jared, we start getting in that 90% range. There's only so many weeks that I can train him above that, especially in this
Right.
off season. Now, when we're peaking for meet, we can carefully plan out and be a little bit better. But even the off season, there's only so many times that we can work above that to get in that range. So a lot of his
Yep.
trainings, 70, 80%, multiple sets, multiple reps, watching his volume because he's a bigger guy. Same thing with Mary Jane. The bigger guys can't handle too much, and he would definitely need, you're squatting 900 for reps. You need 5, 6, 7 minutes in between sets there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always liked Conjugate's approach, and for me, not having that, I've never was at that level. But when you're building from a 300 to a 400 to 500, 600 squat, you can go with that max effort method a lot more often. When you're, because I was still growing. It wasn't like I was at this high level where there was only another 10 pounds or 15 or 20 pounds a year. Like Hoff puts on 5 pounds on his total every 12 months, right? You're at that level. You can't be at that percentage all the time. So it was easier for me to be, in that max effort range more often than every few months. But when you're that big, carrying that much weight, and you're moving that much weight, hitting the max effort every week, so damaging. You just can't recover. Can't recover from it. And then the risk for injuries much higher. Um, you talked about working with Center Grove and Lucas at North Side. We just had Kevin Vanderbush on a few months back, who's they call him the Godfather in Indiana for strength and conditioning, and he's done a ton. It's been great talking with him. And the schools keep continuing to evolve. They keep adding more and more to it, and they get better and better results. You mentioned you want to get into current trends and how athletes get too caught up in them. So, are you talking about high school kids, adults, powerlifters? Which group did you mean by that, and which trends? Well, let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, my adults are the easy ones, Jim. They're the ones that they'll listen to you. They want to be there. They don't roll their eyes at you. Lucas can tell you, working in a high school, they'll
Yep.
drive you nuts sometimes. Not so much them, but yeah, when you look at the high school kids, information is just right there at their fingertips all the time. And their favorite athletes or their wrestlers are looking up to, or their NFL guys are doing this crazy, Joel Seedman stuff in the off season, and they're wanting to know about all this. And hey, I saw this, or hey, one of my wrestlers, Kyle Day, trains with functional movement patterns, and it's like, well, hey, look at what he did for all the 25 years before that style of training, before he's at this elite level now. So it's
Sure.
just something with at fingertips. You'll see guys hearing that. These guys will be posting some stuff about it. They're with these big name companies. So you got to really look at what they did to get to that level in the first place. And a lot of them did some very serious, very heavy strength training. Most of my athletes are pretty good. They bought in, but they'll ask about, hey, I saw this guy doing this, or hey, coach, I saw this Olympic guy doing this, or hey, I saw this person doing this. Buddy Morris was just on talking about Buddy, who's a legend in the strength conditioning field too. One who I got to be under with Tommy Zielinski at the Cleveland Browns for a little bit. Buddy, as long as he's still dealing with athletes in the NFL. When they go back to their trainers, they'll come back and they'll see all this silly stuff going on, or I need to work on this, and Buddy is very good with the knowledge and the base of stuff and the science behind it. But it's just something with the information that's out there. It's something you deal with, and I show my kids why. But as long as you're getting people progress, keeping them injury free, and they're doing better in their sports or in their lifting, they're going to keep buying into your system. But the question's always going to come up about this person does this, or this person does this, or what should I do over here? I saw this guy doing this. What do you think about this?
Hmm. There's that trust component. And earlier on, when they don't know you that well, there really isn't any. So then you got to give them information and educate them so they understand why. Then you got to show them the results so they actually believe you. You got to do it multiple times. But after a while, you won't need to say much. Like I can
Yep.
put you over when Louis was around, or get you with Shane Sweat or Dave Tate or Brand Smitley locally. people that know what they're doing, and you're like, okay, what do I need to do? Got it. And you just go ahead and start training. But until you bridge that gap and build that trust and show them some results, then it's a work in progress. And it's true with anybody. And whether you're talking about lifting or training or your spouse or your coworker, it's that piece that Jocko talks about all the time. You have to give a little more to get a little more back, and it takes time to build that.
Yep, absolutely. Well said there, Jim. I think that's the thing. Once you build that trust, and it goes back to the building a relationship. We've known that since we got into coaching, but to get to a point where my kids they believe in what we're doing and they're still making progress. They're the top athletes in their sport, strength wise or lifting wise, and they'll keep buying into what you're doing because it keeps working.
Yep.
It's cool because when I started, obviously years. This is my fourth year at Northside. When we started, we had zero strength and conditioning. Our weight room before it got remodeled we had nothing. We had a lot of racks though. But we just didn't have a culture in the weight room at all. Our guys and girls, with the system that in our community, they were never exposed to any kind of strength and conditioning. So after building year after year after year, it's really cool to see a guy that's, probably without strength training and any kind of physical preparation, probably not going to see the field. If all that kid was doing, like for example, we had a kid this weekend that, who I would have never dreamed would be, 2-3 years ago, I'd never guessed he'd be lined up at tight end, running routes and catching balls and flying down the field. And behold, he's out there last Friday night and at tight end catching the ball, running around, flying around like he's been there before. That's what's cool about the strength and conditioning stuff. Building these athletes up from essentially, they have no experience to being able to actually earn a spot on the field and be able to be, usable, valuable, have some sort of, value to the team where they can actually earn a spot on the field on Friday night or on a basketball game or something like that. And I got to see that firsthand, a kid that has done nothing but work for 2-3 years, get on the field and actually do, a really, really good job out there. Just to add on to what you guys were saying.
Yeah. No, Lucas, I think you see the same thing. That's honestly how I built my powerlifting program. It was the same thing when I came here down to Franklin High School. We didn't have anything with strength conditioning, and it was the same thing. And I wanted to show, like, hey, we can actually build something here. And there were kids who were putting in the extra work, coming in on the optional days that I had. That's how I built my lifting team. That's where all my national champions, that's where the kids I've had for over 10 years, they still come back and train with me. Shelby Morse has been one of my longest lifters. She just took 4th place in the Open. Set the all-time American bench press record, 287-pound bench press at 217-pound body weight. She's the current American record holder in that, and she was nothing more than a volleyball and a tennis player who just kept showing up and did very well with that stuff. And then we took it even further and, got into competitive lifting, and she just took off, was on many worlds. I got to travel around with her and her parents to several world championships in different countries, and she's still racking up medals and still racking up yards today. And it all started, like you said,
Nice.
just from getting kids to believe in, getting kids to buy in. But that's honestly how I started my entire powerlifting program, was from that.
Nice.
If the kids grow up and they have a coach that kind of like really touches them mentally and connects with them, they'll stay loyal and come back to them, for years. Like you'll see, unfortunately, I'm a big Cleveland Browns fan, and but Nick Chubb just came back, and right, he just posted some of his numbers, videos of him lifting, and he's doing 4 or 5 power cleans like every 30 seconds for like a set of 3 or a set of 4, and he squatted 610 on a bar. I'm not sure the name of it, with a ton of whip. So he's one had a connection with his high school because that's where he goes back and trains and kind of rehabs himself, and then built himself back up so he could get on the field. So you guys clearly make an impact. You see all these kids all the time. That's awesome. Jeremy, now that you're not with a high school and you're sitting there working with them all the time, I'm sure you're still seeing high school athletes. So how's your role kind of evolving from being the guy that's there all the time to working with all the kids to now with just a select few, and they still have their strength coach where they're at currently in addition to you?
Yeah, no, it's been a great change. I missed the grind of the high school. There's obviously opportunities that I've kind of passed up here recently. but it's neat. It's a whole different side being private versus the high school for sure, because the people that show up, they want to be there. They're paying to be there. They're bought in. They're pretty good athletes. Some when they come in, some like Lucas just mentioned that, you don't know if they're going to see the field or what's going on, but it's amazing what the weight room can do with those kids when the parents are bringing them in. But so if you have a dedicated family staff, that's a huge part for my younger kids coming in there. But to answer your question is the kids simply come in, they tell me what they did in their strength conditioning class. Because I have a variety, like you have, Jim. We have a variety of kids from different school systems coming in. And, some have good strength coaches. Some, unfortunately, just have the old gym teacher they just put in there to do stuff. Like Lucas said, he had to change an entire strength conditioning program around. I've been there at 3 different schools, Lucas, so I understand. But I just ask the kids what they did, what they worked on. I want them training very heavy in the class. I tell them, hey, don't shortchange it. Take advantage. It's an opportunity for you to get better. I'll work around it. So if they've hit, a lot of lower body, when they come in with me, I might hit, mostly upper body that day. If they hit a combination, I'll hit a combination. If they hit heavy benches, I might hit heavy assistance work and maybe some heavy close grip benches. Because we got to remember, these kids at this age, they are recovery machines. We forget about that because recovery is another thing that's thrown around left and right. These kids are recovery machines. They can do multiple stuff multiple times a week. And just, they'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. Where we would be sitting like, oh, man, we're tore up, or they can train above 90%. I don't think Pelican's chart really relates to these kids in any fashion. So I just asked them what they've worked on, what they did, and I work around their training over there. I know their weaknesses and stuff too. If they're not hitting a lot of ab work in class, if their coach is throwing Olympic lifts on them and we need to work on those because they're not very good, if they're not getting deadlifting in, if they're not doing a lot of posterior chain work, you'll do a lot of glute ham raises, a lot of very heavy back extensions. If there are a lot of them, they're teaching just the front squat because it's an easier squat than teaching a back squat to a group of 60, 70 kids. So, they'll be back squatting with me. I think that's great for the lower back. If you front squat all the time, you'll start to see kids with a very soft lower back and not developed enough because they're not sitting back into their hips enough. So again, I just kind of pick and choose what I worked on. Several kids, they might come in, they're all doing the same stuff in class. So from Center Grove or from Whiteland or from, any other schools that are out here, and we'll pick and choose what I think they need to work on, and we'll kind of develop their program. So it's hard to develop a program that you want to because you don't know what the coach is doing or what's going on in their lifting class. So sometimes they're coming in, they're telling me, and I'm making their workout up on the spot, and we're just going through with it and going hard.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're faced with the same challenges. We're no different than anybody else. We want to be complimentary. We don't want to be adversarial with their strength coach at school because they're there with them more. They're with their team. They need to make sure that's their priority. We're here, we're here for that extra 10%, that going that extra 10 yards. We're trying to fill in the gaps, anything that were missed. And not that the teachers or the coaches aren't doing a good job. They might have 70 kids and they got 50 minutes. It's hard to get enough done. And as the kids get better and better, the volume's going to have to increase for them to keep evolving. So they come by, get some more work, and that's where we make an impact. As you know, Jeremy, I should have asked you this before, what your numbers were when you were competing. Let's just give me one number. Let's say your squat. Well, no, you said bench is your favorite, right? So what was your best bench?
Best bench was 523 pounds. I was a bronze medal at the 2009 IPF World Championships.
Was that with a shirt? No shirt?
Yeah, shirt on. It was 2-hour weigh, and I weighed at 217. Best raw bench was 455 pounds, but when I was competing, they really didn't have raw. So right. I really wouldn't work up above much of, 440 or so before I'd start putting my bench shirt on. But 455 was my best. I think I really could have pushed it up to a little bit higher than that in the off season, but we're competing with bench shirts on. So 523.6 was that. My coach made a great number that day. Sherman Ledford was my coach. We had more left in the tank, but we talked ahead of time. And my goal then and his goal, both of our goals, was to really place as high as we can and walk away, because this is my first time making the Open. And I lost those before I didn't even make the world team for the Open division after college. So we made the Open. We sat and talked about my goals, what I really wanted to do. I wanted to medal and everything. And that was the exact number I needed to pull away with a bronze medal at the World Championship. Silver medal was a little bit out of way, and gold medal, the guy from the guy from Ukraine, Sergey Pevnev, he's benching close to 600 pounds in the 220-pound weight class. So we picked the right number. It was what I needed for that day, and it was in line with what we talked about.
That's good. That's awesome. So I needed that number, the 520. No one gets there in a year or 2 or 3 years. There's a level of perseverance year after year. You keep adding your total, you keep building your accessories, everything around it, right? So the perseverance has to keep growing and growing. And when you're at a heavier weight or you work on your accessories at the end, when you don't want to do another rep, but you need to for that growth, perseverance is going to be key. And some people say, well, they'll look at you and, well, Jeremy was just born that way. He was just gifted. No, he did all that prior work with the sleds, right? They'll say that they're gifted. I say, well, why don't you just build your own gifts since you don't think since you think they're just giving everybody else. But how do you gauge perseverance in an athlete? But more importantly, how do you help build that?
I just reflect back on what I did. I mean, I had a coach, like I said, instill that from 6th grade on. And when I got passed on to Dick Voinovich, like I said, his son's wrestle at University of Iowa right now, he built that even more. He was a Division I wrestler himself, state champion. He put that mentality into me about attacking the weight room like you attack wrestling matches, like you attack life with everything. So I think that, and he built a lot of independence in it. He taught me how to be independent on my own. He, made me get out of my comfort zone. And that's, honestly how I got into West Side Barbell. I was fighting at the Marcus Marinelli's gym, Strong Style Gym, MMA in Independence, Ohio. That's where Steve Miocic, that's where he is from. Marcus trained with Louis Simmons for over 10 years. He's one of the OGs at West Side. And I kept bugging Marcus and bugging him until he said, finally, like, all right, I'm just going to let you go. If you screw it up, it's your fault with Louis. And, it was just one of those things that I just learned to persevere and ask questions about that. I got in around some really good ventures in Cleveland, Ohio. I was up at King's Gym in Bedford. So, yeah, they had some really good lifters over there. I had one of my world team roommates. He was the greatest squatter of all time, held a junior, open, masters, all these world records in the squat. My squat was my lagging one. Usually a powerlifter always got one lift that's always lagging behind. So I'd go out and train with him. When everybody was partying at the, after the world championships, I was sitting down with my little camera that had the flip side that you could push play and rewind and everything on it. And I sat down with all the foreign coaches that, who had beaten me, and I made them talk to me about their training programs, what they were doing differently, how they were training their athletes, especially the ones that beat me. I want to know what those guys were doing differently. So I just try to install that in my kids. I had one girl, she just competed at the sub-junior world championships. Mark Garrett and I, we both coach her. Stella's done a great job for us. And I told her, she had a pretty good Worlds. It was just tough. And she got to see over 24 girls from around the world competing. And, she was just she was down on herself. She had a good meet. It was her first experience out there, placed top 10. But I told her, I said, what are you going to do with your time? I said, everybody's down there. I said, you need to go talk to these girls, make some friends. I said, get some of their programs. I said, you need to learn to be independent on your own too. You need to learn to take advantage of a situation that maybe didn't work out the best for you, which I thought she did a good job for her first one. There's always something to work on. And I tell my athletes that all the time. Jim, the reason we had to schedule our training session late is I had a couple kids. My one kid just signed with Kent State University Division I wrestling. He had some stuff going on. He couldn't make it into late. And him and I have a goal that we're going after the state title this year. And he knows he has to get his workouts in. That's just something I've always talked to my kids about. I've used some of my experiences, but I just really instill them and try to get them to be independent. No matter what, you got to get your training in. No matter what, you still got to show up. No matter what type of day it is. So I think I just look at my experiences and I always hammer that on my kids to learn to be independent, learn to show up, learn to keep grinding through. No matter what, just be there and we'll make it happen.
And there's so much there. Like you'll see Tom will still put out posts on Westside all the time, great educational stuff, and you'll see photos of Louis after the meet. Like he's there to win, and then as soon as it's over, he wants to talk to everybody else and pick all their brains. He's always, he's hunting for that information, and you can see that with you and Louis, mostly because of the hairstyle, but also the fact that you guys are, clearly humble. So many times I talk to people at meets, or whether it's CrossFit or powerlifting or Highland Games, and the amount of people that simply they know it all. They don't need to know anything else. They don't need to be told anything else. And some of them are coaches too, and I was like, shit, man. The more I know, the more I figure out I don't know. And if you walk around really humble, you're gonna keep asking all those questions. So that girl of yours who's going around getting more information, she's just setting herself up. She's like a 3 to 5, 10-year approach, not just this one meet. So she's setting herself up for the long term. I was at Jack's game. The team got annihilated by the University of Miami, the Hurricanes, and I can't remember the score, 50-0, something like that. And he's just broken after the game because they got just crushed. Their team's way better, and he's just upset. And he's like, "Man, I don't know what to do." I said, "Well, take a deep breath, and then in the next hour on the bus ride back to your hotel, as you're getting ready for your plane, just write down all the lessons you can think of in this moment." And he looked at me just annoyed as fuck. He's like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Just try to learn what you can right now. This is your shot. You can learn right now and just work on it." And he's like, just shakes his head. I'm like, "Hey, it's not what you want to hear. Like you just lost." right? And in this case, you lost bad, but top 10 in the world, that's not losing bad. Um, can you get some more information out of it? Because the game's not over. There's still more rounds for these kids. Um,
Well, Jim, that
you know,
went
when
with me since Louis.
go
I
ahead.
mean, that was a big thing with him. After the World Championships, my first one in 2003, I ended up taking fourth place in the all around. I medaled in the bench and the deadlift, but I ended up taking fourth in the all around, and I lost by 2.5 kilos to Andreas Helmvit from Norway, who became one of my mortal enemies. We're always battling up and stuff. Yeah. And I made him become friends with me just so I get his training programs. He thought we were friends. We are now, but I was only becoming friends so I get his training. I wanted to see what he was doing. And his coach actually used to send me training, Detmar Wolf, who's now the coach of Team Germany, national team coach. I used to make them send me their training and how they were doing stuff. And he actually coached me for a little bit before there was online training through Microsoft Excel. And I used to have to download stuff. And I could speak Norway in powerlifting terms. But
Okay.
when I talked to Louis, I was pretty devastated about taking fourth. I'm like, man, I'm 2.5 kilos and I lost third place and it was on a final deadlift. And, I could have blamed the coaches. They didn't give me the number one I wanted, but it was my fault. And Louis is like, well, he goes, you need to come down here more often.
To
And that
win.
was it. It was silent on the phone with Louis. That's all he said. He goes, you come down here a little bit. He goes, you need to come down here more often. We'll fix it. And there was silence on the phone like that. It was as simple as that with Louis Simmons.
Yeah.
And I was, all right. And I was down there that weekend and, I came down more often and got better training and he helped me out more with my weaknesses and stuff. And I got better from just hearing that. It was very simple with him. You need to come down more. You need to be around us more. You need more training down.
Oh man. You said in the beginning that the documentary, like we don't get to pick what's edited, and you know more than I do about what life was like there. Anything that you know of that you thought, man, I wish I would have talked about this or explored that a little bit more in the West Side versus the world, or instances you want to share right now about life there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he had a lot of PhDs from Ohio State University that were down there training.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like a lot of, alternative users down there, or guys that, they were live or die, but he actually had a very intelligent people. That's where he learned a lot about exercise science, exercise physiology. A lot of PhDs were trained down there. And here's the most important thing is they don't realize how good of a speed coach he was. Butch Reynolds trained down there, Olympic gold medalist, Olympic silver medalist, and Butch kept pulling his hamstring over and over again. And Lucas, I mean, it says right behind you, weak things break. All right. He's been saying that since forever. And he couldn't even do a glute hamstring raise, Butch Reynolds, when he was down there. And Louis would train him on that. Louis had a whole stuff. Like he was telling me why he didn't barbell back squat. He just didn't have the limbs and it didn't look right and put him in awkward positions. So Louis had him doing a lot of belt squat routines, a lot of glute ham raises, single leg lunges. Since he had long limbs, Louis was also doing max effort upper body because we had to get Butch's upper body strong. So he had to do max effort work, but he limited the range of motion because Butch didn't need all that. He wasn't a competitive lifter. And
Right.
he had the one girl's name. He called her Mo. She's mentioned a few of the articles as well. Louis was helping train her, and she had some of her best strength training when she was down there. She's an Olympic gold medalist in the 4x400 meter relay, and he had her down there training. And he would train these track guys, not like his lifters, but he would train them hard. When a lot of track coaches were afraid to do that. And I've seen him where he had a lot of people from Ohio State, these NCAA All-American runners whose track coaches says, you've reached your genetic potential. This is about your limit you're going to get. And Louis doesn't understand that. Louis understands power. So Louis would train them as far as the strength training wise, his traditional box squats. He would modify stuff, but he got them lifting very heavy on there. But he was also a speed coach. What people don't see is the stuff that he would do. I was down there and like the South Wales rugby team was staying down there for like a month at an extended stay. And he was helping these guys out. 2 months before he passed away, I brought my lifter Shelby Morse down there. She always wanted to go down and train. I called Louis up and they obviously invited us down there to train. And Louis, this is right after he had like a triple or quadruple bypass, like only a couple weeks after. He was in there helping us out very early in the morning, pointing stuff out with Shelby, pointing my weaknesses out because I was training too. And then right after that, he was going to the track to go speed train several athletes. I'm like, I didn't know you're still doing this. He goes, listen, if you're around me long enough, you can get the stuff that you need to be a good powerlifting coach. He goes, I've been around speed all my life and power. He goes, I know how to do this stuff. So it's a lot of the stuff they didn't talk about was all the other athletes from all the other sports that he was training, these All-Americans that he would drop down their times. Butch Reynolds, the Olympic gold medalist, Olympic silver medalist. They touch base on some of the fighters. Marcus brings his entire team down there from Strong Style, which is one of the best MMA gyms of all time because Marcus trained down there for over 10 years. So I don't really think they touch base just how many athletes and how many coaches. I met several Russian coaches down there. There were NFL strength coaches down there, college strength coaches down there. The rugby guys from, like I said, Wales and New England were down there. Boris Chico came in to visit. So I don't really think of how many people were actually down there training. And Louis never charged them a single dime for that time that they were down there training. He never charged me at all. He even offered my lifter, Shelby Morse, he goes, you come down. He goes, I'll get you a hotel room. We'll take care of your breakfast and dinner for whatever. He goes, you just tell me what it is. And he goes, I'll take care of it. My lifter's like, Shelby's like, who is this guy? Like, what's his deal? Nothing. I said, the guy wants to see you get stronger. He thinks he can help you out. It's good for you to get another coach's advice. She goes, but what's his angle? I said, there is no angle. Louis loves this stuff. His life is in this gym. And this is what he does with all these other athletes that are around him. So I don't think it really expanded on how much of an impact he had with other athletes, other coaches, the people from around the world that would come to him. Like you said, Shaolin, Shaolin Temple doesn't go to you. You go to Shaolin Temple. But it was just neat to see and hear all these stories of all these famous athletes that he was training and working with, and how much better they were becoming because they went down there and trained and sought his knowledge.
Yeah. When they say you give, it comes back tenfold. And a lot of people, me included, you get skeptical of that, even that thought process. And he's one where he just gave and gave and gave, and it still kept coming back. And he's different than, I would say, most people in that. He wasn't going to movies, so he didn't care. He didn't care about anything. He wanted to be in the gym training. And so most people are not that singularly focused. They have families and kids, and he said, I don't have time for kids. They have all these. They might have a hobby or two, or even their own faith. And he's like, no, for him, it's just the gym. So he can get amazingly. They built a statue of that guy. It's hard to get my head around it because I'm not saying I have distractions, but I do. 6 kids and another gym. So it's hard with whatever you're doing because we're never singularly focused. But his knowledge is amazing, and the fact that he kept giving it away was even more so. I had a question. I'm not sure the multiple, but you were talking about the guy that kept hurting his hamstring. When you're sprinting, it's 7-8 times body weight of force on your hamstring, and when people don't train it, it boggles the mind. Why wouldn't you build your hamstrings up when it's like a 2 times body weight is a huge squat? When you're sprinting, man, the force is much more than that. Like, I can't understand why sprinters or track coaches wouldn't want to build that because they're under the duress anyways when they're in their sport.
Yeah. Well, if you look at, I always refer back to Ben Johnson. Charlie Francis, we always hear about that, and with strength conditioning. And Charlie was a very good speaker. I still listen to his stuff, still have his books with everything. But if you look at Ben Johnson, he was, box squatting, it's above parallel, but he's doing that 600 for reps. I believe it was 3 weeks out before the Olympics, 600 for reps. There's videos of him benching 315 for reps. Charlie even talked about how important the bench press was because guess what? Ben wasn't getting any taller, all right, and he had to have better ground force production on there. So,
right.
When Charlie talked about that, yeah. So you just look at all that stuff, and it is a big foundation for everything that's out there with speed because, Lucas, the kids that you and I deal with at the high school level, there's only so much we can do with speed training. They literally have to get stronger to produce more force into the ground. Now, that's not everything. They still have to sprint. They still have to have good mechanics. There's a whole list of stuff they can do with everything. But I still believe that strength is a foundation. And I saw that with Louis, with all his track athletes, all Americans, gold medalists like we just talked about with Butch Reynolds and everything. He got them stronger. He kept them injury-free. He got them past what track coaches thought was their genetic potential, and everybody around them got better.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's funny, when you talk about high school athletes, about strength being probably the main priority. Last year, it makes me think about last year whenever we had no space to do really any true speed training. I got about 23, 24 yards of turf in my weight room. And, that is about the extent of our speed training that we did. We lift, I moved from doing like a 4-day lift, 1-day speed day. I didn't know how this would go. I didn't necessarily, it was a teacher that I was working with that actually suggested it, but we went to 5 days of strength training. We adjusted our warm-ups a little bit differently, and our jumps and our loaded jumps and our plyometrics were all included, but we did 2 sprints a day. So we would do our dynamic warm up, and then we'd hit our 2 sprints at the end, and then we'd go strength train. We'd do upper body, lower body, often like upper body, lower body, and then a combo day, an accessory day. And I think our guys, looking back at like our times, we had the fastest times that we've ever had, like the best averages that we ever had, and we spent the less amount of time working on speed work,
Yep.
which was really interesting to me. And I think it benefited a lot of our, especially our football team. We did the same stuff with the football team. We just lifted every day, built a foundation. Really had a true off season, and we just did weights every day and 2 sprints a day after the warm up.
I tell you, I'll name 3 guys right now. John Janacek, one of my good friends, he was at Trinity High School in Texas. He was a multiple-time college guy. Jim, you'd like him. He was he was a strength coach at Nebraska, the godfather of college strength conditioning.
Right? Yeah. The black shirts.
He was under the Nebraska program. What's that?
The black shirts, the offensive linemen that get the start, they get to wear the black shirts, the Nebraska shirts.
Yeah.
But
he ended up going to the high school level, and he created one of the best teams in all of Texas, which Texas is football. He was at Trinity. Yep. They were state champions, top of the line. Guess what? He just did what Lucas said. They barely did any sprint work because these guys and their coach were doing stuff, but he did all weight room work. If you look at Mark Garrett right now, who's National Strength Coach of the Year for the high schools, Mark doesn't do any of that stuff. I mean, he will put dynamic stuff in and everything, but he's all about lifting because these kids are getting enough to practice everything. I'm giving stuff that they're not. If you look at Center Grove High School, we got ranked top 13 in the nation. We had 9 Division I scholarship athletes the last year I was there, just for football. And we didn't do anything. Now, Coach Moore ran speed stuff in the off season, but 100% Lucas and Jim was all in the weight room work. So you look at the top 3 schools, top 2 right there, another one in Texas. Their strength coaches are all saying what Lucas just said is, barely any strength because this is a high school setting. Again, you only have X amount of time. You're giving the kids what they're not going to get, and that's the strength level. And Lucas saw that. I saw that. The 2 top guys in Indiana who battled for state champions saw that. And the guy in Texas who was, under the Nebraska program and everything. And, he was at Trinity High School, John Janacek, and he's winning state titles without doing that stuff. Kids needed strength training. There's so much that happens from a proper strength training athletic development.
I love it.
You've watched Carson Steele. He's a Center Grove kid. He's now with the Chiefs, running back. He started at Ball State his freshman year, same year as my son Jax. And Carson there squatted 500 for 10 as a freshman, 18-year-old. I'm like, yeah, he's running through people. It's not hard. He's squatting 500 for 10, right? He's running through people. And then a few weeks ago, we had Shani Lips come on. She was a pro volleyball player, played for Peru. 6'1", tall, lean, and she took a year off in college because she got hurt, and when she's rehabbing, and she goes, I'm going to spend this whole year just getting stronger. So someone, thank God, taught her how to box squat and had her squat to a higher box, and she kept loading up her squat and loading up her squat and loading up her squat. And she goes, when I started jumping again, every time I landed, I wasn't in pain. I could absorb the force from landing so much easier. I could jump significantly higher. I could handle the volume of all the change in direction and jumping all game long. It was almost a joke. It was so easy. Football, volleyball, male, female, same deal. Build that pyramid, build the strength, and everything else is so much easier, right?
Yeah, but Jim, like we talked about, unfortunately, we still hear about people. I don't want to get my son too big. I don't want to get my daughter looking like a guy. I don't want this. Those are the kids, and those are the people that they sit on the sidelines. I got a girl right now, Jim. She's at Marion University right here in Indianapolis. She came to me middle of the track season, so her parents brought her in. When does a parent do that? Usually, we'll bring them in afterwards. We'll start them after the season
or an injury.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So she had a broken pelvis her sophomore year and was still going into her junior year. And her parents, her jumps weren't going anywhere, Jim. Very good hurdler, very good high jumper. Like I said, scholarship to Marion University right now. And so they brought her in the middle of the year, and she was so weak. Hey, I got 6 weeks. I'm going to do what I can. I gave no promises. She ended up qualifying for state in the hurdles and in the high jump, and she was in lane 1 at regionals, which is like, hey, good luck. Hope you place. She ended up winning the whole thing because she was weak, and we had to strengthen those things up for her. And now she's high jumping real well. She's not afraid to put on some lean muscle mass. She just took 4th. She was an All-American as a true freshman. Just took 4th in the high jump at the NAIA Collegiate Nationals. And again, she comes back here to train. She's not afraid to get stronger. Every time she gets a little bit stronger, he jumps a little bit higher.
Yep.
Lucas from all the back work, hyperextensions, all of them going over the bar. A lot of her friends, a lot of her athletes, like people around her, they always have some back problems. She has some minor discomfort. By the end of the season, she's still jumping great because all those muscles in her abs, her lower back, obliques, everything around there is freaking strong. The girl squats over 200 pounds, all right, for a high jumper. 5'10", like, I don't even know what Brooke weighs, maybe 130, 140. And it's just amazing what they were able to do. And you know what? Let those other girls say, I don't want to train hard. I don't want to do this. We're going to keep getting stronger. We just had an NAIA All-American as a true freshman because she puts the work in the weight room and it shows up, and she's healthy at the end of the season, and she's strong, and her confidence is up. Jim, you know as well as I know, when those kids are hitting good numbers or they're strong, and you tell them, hey, look what you're doing at. Look, yeah, coach, I'm feeling great. You can't put a price on that confidence, putting them into a major competition.
Yep.
We talked about this in an earlier podcast. The start of our year, our football season, we had the best off season as a football program since I've been at Northside. Had total buy-in, total commitment. Guys we had over 20 405 back squatters. We had 10 450 plus, and we had 2 500 guys, which is beyond what you asked me 4 years ago if that would ever be the case. I would have been, there's no way. Or 4 years ago, our heaviest back squat was 315. But they had their best off season they've probably ever had. And then we come out to our first football game, team we lost to last year, and to see them play with way more confidence, be able to handle adversity, to be able to take on a physical football game and continue to be like in the fourth quarter to be pushing and fighting and still looking like they're strong and fast. I think the confidence in that their ability to recognize that they put in the work and now it's showing on the field. That was really cool to see too. That was when you see it happen in front of your face after so much work. And it's amplified when it's at the high school level. You really, really see it happen. So, yeah.
I tell you, one of the best seasons we had 2 state champions training. Jim, you know how it is, man. Training right out of your garage, man. Some of the best times, right? It's where you started. It's where I started. Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
We had 2 state champions from Center Grove. I had Drake Buchanan. I had Hayden Watson. And those guys, right before state, we talked about this. We said, am I peaking you for sectionals like the rest of these, knuckleheads, where the coach would tell them to go lighter? I said, are you guys peaking for state? Like, coach, we're peaking for state titles. I trained them hard all the way through. We even had hard workouts a week before the state championships. And those guys hit little PRs. And I didn't max them out or anything silly like that, but I let them work up. And the confidence those guys had, like, I've never been this strong at the end of the season before, coach. Man, I felt great. I talked to Hayden. He went through, and a kid that had majored him earlier in the year, he goes, coach, I just ran through him. He goes, he ended up, I think he ended up sticking him or majoring him big time. He goes, I just felt stronger. He goes, those lifts we were hitting before, I've never felt that before state. I felt good. We were training on Wednesday. He was competing on Friday. Most parents would say, no. He stuck with me with everything. Same thing with Drake Buchanan. Hayden went out there and won the state championship. He's wrestling at Citadel Division I. Drake Buchanan's wrestling at the Air Force Academy right now. But all those guys, and Jim, we were discussing this, when they go off to different programs and stuff, they always want to, come back home, or this is where they got their results from. And those guys,
right.
They live and die this. I talk to them still to this day. I helped them a lot with their, beginning training when they got to college. But it's amazing, like you said, just that confidence about, man, going in there, like, I am a little bit stronger. Holy cow, I'm hitting this at the end of the season. Usually I'm going lighter by now. I feel great. And when you have a kid tell you that, you peak them out right confidently and physically.
Yep. There's a number of lessons there. We had Tim Rodemaker on. He's a strength coach from Florida Marlins or Miami Marlins. Those guys are playing 162 games, right? And they're still lifting 3-4 days a week because they have to. What are they going to do? Take the whole year off and not lift? So if the pros are lifting, why wouldn't the colleges? And the college people are lifting. Why wouldn't the high school people? 2, why we say confidence comes from reps. When you're tight and not confident, you're burning through so much oxygen. Your muscles, everything's shortened up because you're so tight. Your range of motion is worse. So if you're running or doing whatever, you're nowhere near as efficient. When you're relaxed and loose, because like you believe, you're going to take a little bit more risk. So with a little bit more reward, hopefully if you execute on that play, but you're playing loose. You're not tight. You're not burned through as much oxygen, and you can just simply be better because you're not all bound up. On top of the fact that you are uh, stronger and more powerful, and even if they're not maxing out like their clean or their squat or their bench to hit a new number to PR that week, they can max out on their some of their accessories. They can hit PRs on their accessories and start feeling good about that. Hey, I PR'd like three or four lifts today. They weren't my main lifts, so you know that your next big lift is going to be a PR because you've built all the accessory work as PR, so the confidence is there. So you can build up that confidence a lot of ways if they're stacking those wins day in and day out. That's why our mantra with this whole show is win the day. How many wins can you get on your nutrition, on your recovery, on your lifting, so that when you do plan Friday nights or all weekend long, you go in there thinking, man, I had 30 PRs this week on all my processes. Yeah, I'm ready.
Yep.
I'm ready. And you start dialing kids back on lifting or whatever else, and you're like, you're getting weaker, right? You're getting weaker, and then at the hardest part of the season, when people are damaged, you want to give yourself the best shot. So it's complete counterintuitive. You go with the opposite, like George Costanza on Seinfeld. That would be me. Go the opposite way than what mainstream does, and you probably have a better shot.
Yep. Jim, like you just said, like sometimes you don't hit that PR. I just had Jared Martin, 1,000-pound squatter up here. He's getting ready for Worlds, like we talked about. I also got one of my younger lifters, Braden Golf. She's 23 years old. He squats 860 right now, benches 660, pulls 750. Well, part of the reason he's on my team is because Jared's obviously the number one guy, and Braden's up here. He's a young kid. He's 23. He's still learning. And we didn't have the best squat day the other day. We were at Indy City Barbell here in Indianapolis. I had to take them up there. We needed spotters. We needed some good equipment. So with Braden, we were talking about we just had trouble with his squat until the very last set. And we're talking about winning the day. And like you just mentioned about that, we took away from this, like, dude, you just hit 3 sets over 800 pounds for doubles. I'm like, have you ever done that in your entire life? And he goes, holy cow. He goes, I didn't even think about that like that. He goes, even though he didn't hit his PR for the day, I'm like, think about the volume you just did. I'm like, you had 3 sets over 800 pounds. He goes, holy cow. He goes, I've only squat over 800 for double. Like one time, he goes, I had 3 sets over 800. He goes, holy cow. He goes, that's what I mean on there. And being a young kid, he was around Jared, who Jared logs his training as much as he logs his nutrition. He counts his own macros. He didn't have anything. He's got 2 books. He's got one for his training, one for his food and his nutrition. And Braden got to see that around how serious Jared takes that. He goes, oh, it's time for me to eat. Oh, I got to have this for lunch. Oh, I got to have this for my workout. Hey, it's a little bit of heavy carb day. And Braden's like, holy cow. He goes, I thought I was doing a good job, which he was. He was doing good. But he goes, now I see why Jared is able to do what he's able to do. He goes, man, he takes his nutrition as serious as he takes his lifting. I said, well, being a drug-free athlete on that part, I said, there's a reason why you got to fuel the machine. And I'm like, he's trying to squat over, which he did, squat over 900 for double that day. And he did it very easily. Braden's like, holy cow. He goes, I got a whole new definition of not only training with intensity, but he goes, I got a whole new definition of winning the day, like you just talked about. Hey, I didn't get my PR, but hey, look at this. I've never done this in my entire life. Wow, I didn't realize that. We also realized about where he was lacking, where he was good, but he wasn't great. And like you just mentioned about recovery and nutrition, what are you doing with the other stuff? He got a big lesson from Jared, seeing that, spending a couple of days with him, like, holy cow, this is why I drove 7 hours from Appleton, Wisconsin to come down and train in Bargersville, Indiana, for a couple of days with you guys. He goes, man, this is like a whole new definition of going back. And he goes, I need to step my entire game up.
That's the beauty of training partners right there. You surround yourself with a few great people, you're going to pick up so much. So when you go to, Zach's conference or Swiss, you'll learn from the presenters, sure. And then when there's a breakout session, you're talking to someone else, you're going to pick up a ton more. There's so much value beyond what's listed when you have legit training partners like that, and you can just pick up all these nuances. I was talking to this guy on the strongman world when we were working with him at this one of the contests that we were hosting, and he wanted to make sure he met Jessica because Jessica had a certain kind of rock climbing shoes that she would use when she's doing truck pull so that she would have good grip, and he couldn't find a good pair, and he wanted to make sure he saw her at the event. Yeah, he wanted to win, right? But he also wanted to make sure he found out that piece of information. What kind of shoes, what are those rock climbing shoes you use when you're doing truck pull because it has better grip. So the training partners, absolutely huge. Also, as a coach, you just point out a number of things. One, you got to be the knowledgeable guy, right? You got to be the perspective guy. You pull an athlete out of the forest, showing them everything, saying, man, you just did this for multiple sets. You haven't done that before. You got to be the cheerleader sometimes. You got to be the consoler sometimes. Sometimes you're like a Catholic priest. They tell you everything, right? Then you got to be the comedian, and because they're down a little bit, you got to make some kind of joke to bring them back up. Wearing all those hats, man, it is that's the artwork of coaching, and it's probably the most fun, but it's a little exhausting. And young and old people, male, female, thin and fat, great and not great. You have to really pull it all together. And now that you're running your own place, you're probably wearing all the hats and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. You forgot. It's got to be a therapist in there too.
Therapist, that's right. Therapist, that's one of the biggest ones. Therapist, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where we're attracting some really good athletes, some really good lifters. I got to go to the Olympic trials this past year with one of my wrestlers. We didn't make the Olympic team, made all the way to the quarterfinals. But it's neat to see these guys because now I'm coaching at a different level before. Like Lucas, we're starting with these young kids, like you said, the 315 to the 405 squats, and how much confidence and culture you're building over there and what you've had to start with and work with. And same thing with Jim, from your garage all the way up to your, amazing facility that you have and the people around and stuff you built over there. But I think it's the same thing now that I'm getting better lifters in, which I've never had before. Everything was always about development. Jim, like you just said, now I'm wearing more hats than ever because now I got these really good lifters who sometimes think they've got it made or think they know it all, play some different hats. So it's neat to have attracted some higher level lifters, some people who are still making progress, but I'm wearing different hats with coaching than I'm before with developing now versus highly motivated people that sometimes I have to pull the reins back. Sometimes I have to push it forward. Like you just said, sometimes I have to be this hat, make a joke. Hey, even though this didn't go well, like you said, Jim, hey, let's go harder on our assistance work. Hey, you made it up for on this. Hey, we figured out your technique on this. Hey, you squatted this for multiple doubles, which you've never done before. And they go, okay, wow, yeah, I didn't really think about, okay, yeah, this was a good day then. So it's funny how when you start with some better people, now I'm coaching a little bit differently with some of the higher end athletes that I have now.
Sure. And you'll still see some of the same ego issues, some of the same, fears getting underneath the bar. Like when I was a 315 squatter, I was nervous the first time doing 315. I was nervous the first time doing 405 and then 495. Like I'm just as nervous each time. And even though you have all those wins on moving that weight up or faster time, there's still that anxiety a little bit. It gets lessened because you build up all those confidence reps, but it's still there. And you still got to play the same game sometimes with some people and get them to push a little bit faster because they're probably not at their genetic potential like some people think, right?
Jim, I think that's one of the biggest compliments I get is, like you had said about your stuff and kids coming back. I've had a lot of my athletes for over 10 plus years that, they come back, they're still training with me, whether they're competing like Shelby or Jenica. I mean, they're still placing the nationals for our powerlifting. Jared, I've had for over 10 years now. I think it's pretty neat when you're able to do that, like you said, because you're still, besides the numbers and stuff and the results, you're still getting that, but they know they can trust you with certain things. They know that you're going to be there for them. They're going to go the extra mile for them. And like, we talked about from the first question you asked me, that person did that for me years ago. So even though sometimes when you get, man, this person's killing me, or man, why is this guy not believe? I'm like, don't you believe? I would never give you a number you're not going to be able to hit. It's just like, hey, I was that person too. I needed that coach at this time. And I make sure that, when the athletes frustrate you or teams or anything like that, sometimes I reflect, hey, I was probably in this boat and this other guy did this for me. So I'll make sure that I, go above and beyond for my guys.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. If you can, show some humility, right? And then also point out, yeah, you've made mistakes too along the way. Here's a mistake that I made. Please don't do this one, right?
I tell them all the time. They get to learn from all my screw ups, my mistakes. I'm like, don't do that. I did that. Don't do that, please. You're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah,
Here's where I did.
Yeah, it's bad. Don't do that shit. No. Also, though, there's a point though. It's really satisfying when they'll come in a bit fearful, and then years later, there's really no fear left. You're like, all right, what are we doing today? And you say it, and they're like, okay. They accept it, and this is what they're thinking already. How do I attack this stuff? The other thing I find very gratifying is, let's say this lady's getting ready to squat, and it's a new number for her, and I say, all right, it's 210. She goes, what? That's what you're putting on the bar? I go, yeah. And she goes, I don't know about that. I said, I've seen all your lifts. I've seen what you're doing. Everything's fine. I could tell by the speed how much is left. There's this number and plenty in the tank. And they're like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't put it on your back if you didn't have it. Now you just got to dial in and push, right? And so at first you have to kind of make this little sale, get this person to believe you. You give them information so there's a bit of trust. You call the right number for them for a few years in a row, they're just like, all right, what's the number, Jeremy, right? And they say, okay, that's the right number. And then they just do it, right? There might be some negotiating back and forth based on how you want to place or what you're looking for strategically, but there's not a question, can you get it? Or if you do say it, maybe you're trying for a win and you're gonna be like, I'm not quite sure if you have it, but if you pull it, you have a win. If you don't, we're at this, that's fine. But normally I don't put a weight on someone's back unless I think this person has it, right? Because you don't want to start building the opposite effect, doubt, right? The last time you called this number, I got fucked. I got stapled, right? Can't have that. So it's so gratifying when they actually believe you and you give them the number and then they hit it and they turn around and you're just like, that little knot. You need to watch them evolve over those years. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to my philosophy. When people ask me about training gym and obviously being around Louis Simmons, West Side Barbell, conjugate style, and then also being around the IPF and being around national and world team coaches and seeing how the foreigners actually train with high volume, high frequency stuff. I think when people come to me for training, my training is centered around that. So you might not have PR on this, but we're going to PR on this over here. So I might not run speed, dynamic effort, conjugate and max effort with everything. I have my own blend where I combine a little bit of that because I saw what was missing.
Sure.
And I saw how technical foreign athletes, powerlifters were that I was competing against. So the way my philosophy is when people ask me about that, it's kind of centered around that, hey, if this didn't go well, we're going to go down, we're going to hit volume sets. Hey, you did your down set. Look, that was a PR. Hey, you know what? This didn't go well. We'll figure it out more next week. Let's go harder on the assistance work. You got to get after this. You didn't get what you wanted over here. You got to get the next best thing. You didn't get gold, then you better come back and definitely come back and get bronze. So I think that's one thing with people buy into my system that, hey, this didn't go well, but I'm able to work with them on this. Hey, we went up on this. Like you said, wearing the many hats. Hey, this didn't go well, but look at the positive sides over here. We're going to take that. We're going to build upon that. Here's your new assistance work you're going to do. The bottom of your squat sucks right now. So we're going to do a ton of pause squats. We're going to do a lot of tempo squats. I was talking with Ed Cohen recently, and I had a trouble with some of my lifters. And Ed he's amazing. I talk to him at least every other week. When I have questions about stuff, he'll answer for me. We're speaking at Swiss together. But I sent him my lifters. My lifters, they're like, why you send me to Ed? I said, because he's going to give you something else that I'm not going to be able to give you. And Ed's like, he goes, you need to slow this lifter down even more. He actually gave me 10-second tempo squats, which, Lucas, in the college strength conditioning, we do 3 to 5 seconds. I had to have a lifter figure out every single part on the way down. We literally were going like steps like this, pause in the bottom, and just come up like a 4 to 5 second tempo. And Ed's like, you need to slow them down even more. He goes, what you're doing is not working. That tempo is not enough. He goes, you need to have a speed day. I'm like, you're recommending dynamic work, Ed? And he goes, yes. And he goes, especially with female athletes, because they overthink stuff. When you're doing speed and dynamic, you only have 45 seconds to a minute in between those 70% squats or 70% benches. You can only focus on 1 or 2 things. So he goes, give them that. Your lifters thinking stuff. I said, okay. And he goes, then they need to figure out each part of their squat on the way down. And I had a girl, oh my God, we had to start with 315 and she was a 405 squatter, but we were just getting buried around, you get above that 95% stuff just wasn't going well. So I tried pause squats. I tried tempo. Ed's like, you need more tempo. So we literally had to start back with 315 with tempo squats. And she was a wreck after those. But we slowly built her up. She was doing a tempo squat, a 10-second with 385. And she ended up PRing a squat that we hadn't PR'd in 6 months by, oh my gosh, I think we were almost 20 pounds, 10 kilos on her, so 22 pounds. Because I went and sought after what was missing. I knew it was missing. I needed somebody else to give me that from the outside. So I had to slow that person down even more. Teach them every single step of the way. Once they were able to figure that out over weeks and weeks, this was over 6 weeks, not 1 or 2 week fix. Okay. Once they were able to do that, then we started hitting PRs. Then we went into our training cycle with that much more confidence, like you just said. Now, hey, think about what you just tempoed. Think about what your max was. Think about how much you've improved on everything. Think how much practice you've had with all this stuff. So we had tempo and we had deep squats, and then they were able to come through with a PR that we hadn't had for 6 months on.
Yeah. So I was limited, my first foray was in learning was Zach's book, Underground Strength, and then 531 with Wendler, and then it's about the Lewis books. And so you can read the books and all, but then there's all the things that aren't written in the books. And then there's what Ed just said about, you need to go even slower with tempo, and that's all the filling all the gaps. And, you stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Because other folks have that knowledge. So what I was having to do for years if I'm figuring out conjugate, I'm following what the book says, but you know what? I'm going to try this and tweak it a little bit. And this seems to see how this affects me and my athletes. And you start developing whether it's a hybrid system or, like you said, more volume. And because everyone has the knowledge that's in their head, but it always evolves. Like you can easily say that you're smarter than Isaac Newton because all he did was get the physics at this level. Well, if you take the physics class that taught everything that he knew, I'm already at his level, right? And then you take the next class, well, now I'm above. So once you learn and then you evolve it over the next 10 years, then there's still something more. And then you can get around those other folks that already, like, how many decades has Ed been competing? And then you send them there, point out that, not insecure, not an ego problem for Jeremy, send to someone else is great. And then because Ed's going to send them back and better, and then being humble about that, you actually focus on the athlete's performance, and they're now hitting PRs just like you said. So many huge takeaways there, Jeremy. That was outstanding. I could keep you going all night, but I know it's late and you got more to do in the morning. But I don't want any of the athlete or any of our guests off without running through these rapid fire questions. So similar to the true false, just need the answer. Don't need another
All right,
10 minutes.
I'll try to do better here. Lucas,
you're doing fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're doing great.
Off.
I got no complaints, man. No complaints.
All right.
What do you listen to when you're training? When you yourself are training, what do you like to listen to?
Hardcore metal stuff, man, from the 90s, 2000s, Metallica. I love any of that stuff.
All the powerlifting guys love that. Bucket list adventure you want to do. You haven't done this yet, so where would you want to go and what would you want to do?
Yeah, I'd like to travel to some different other countries. I love when I was coaching before, so I'd like to travel some different other countries, whether it's strength conditioning or the powerlifting side, and see more about how these athletes train. So that way I get a vacation and I get, knowledge on top of where I can spend half the day in the weight room, even though I can spend the full day in there. Learning from these other guys, seeing how they strength train. I love learning about how they train athletes, whether it's Olympic style lifters. Lucas, now you're in Olympic weightlifting. I love the Chinese, how they do a lot of assistance work versus the Bulgarian method. Those guys seem to last through several Olympic training cycles. So I'd like to see more in depth about how they develop these athletes all the way through, how they're lasting so long. Just seeing like the different philosophies. And the gym, like you said, is actually being in it versus reading it. So I'd love to turn my vacations more into a learning experience and really see about other athletes, other sports. I just can't get enough of it. And same thing with powerlifting too.
Oh man. So Jen and I had a huge weightlifting or a powerlifting just knowledge crush on Shane Sweat because he was doing a powerlifting certification that she and I went to. And she and I geek out on you guys, probably because of the same haircut and the beard and the ties at West Side and the results, right? But that nerd shit, we love that. I say nerd shit, but I'm just as guilty. That's outstanding. You left it blank here, but I'm gonna get an answer. What's your favorite sports movie?
Sports movie? I don't have a favorite one. I'll give you a genre. I love any of the documentaries where they really go behind the scenes. You want the answer, man. I love any of the stuff with wrestling. I love the Dan Gable stuff. Anything where they're actually going behind the scenes and really showing what affected that person, how they came up, how they developed, what drove them. I find that the most enticing thing where I can actually sit down and watch that stuff. Dan Gable and the wrestling documentaries are some of my favorites about how he grew up, what drove him, the family tragedies that he had, and how he coached and hours and stuff. So any of that stuff I absolutely love and I'll watch.
That's awesome. I've been through both of Dan Gable's books and about his sister passing, and you talk about his athletes, the guy that would run in the sewer system / steam tunnels to cut weight. The other guy that would lose a national title and he would have the Hawkeye tattooed on his chest, but a broken one that's got shot or killed, and every time he would lose a title, he had a new tattoo. The common theme with the people on Mount Rushmore of coaching or lifting or competing is the relentlessness for every little detail on how can they get so many wins all day. So in Jeremy's dream bucket list vacation, he wants to make sure he's around lifters. That's outstanding. I love that.
Coaches, pro best, yep.
Do you have a favorite book? And it can be fiction or nonfiction. If you start quoting all of Ricka Shanksy's volumes and this and that, Mel Sif and everything else, I'm like, oh man, all right, but go ahead.
I got too many on there. I got a stack like yours in the background with everything. I don't have a favorite book. Let's see.
Safe to say you're a reader. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely, with everything. I got too many. I like more of the stuff about what drives people,
Yes.
their backgrounds, what they did. I like hearing their stories about where they grew up, when they've done stuff. I guess one of my favorite ones was on um, Dave Johnson. He was the Dan and Dave thing back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember that from the decathlon. It was
Oh
a
yeah.
favorite one of my cousins.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one
He,
of them didn't qualify.
yep. That
Yeah.
was Dan. Was the
Dan
one who went on
O'Brien.
and medal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just loved how we didn't know this at the Olympics, but his foot was broken and he was
Mm.
getting shots of Novocaine and all this other stuff. And he had to compete in the decathlon, 10 Olympic events
Yep.
over that, and was still able to come through and medal on there. I love reading about Spencer Lee's stuff. He's a wrestler at the University of Iowa. 2 torn ACLs, knees are busted and gone. He finds a way to win the NCAAs and, comes through and, is an Olympic silver medalist when he was down and out several times with all these injuries. The guy just keeps coming back. They're on a whole different, mentality level. So I love reading really the backgrounds about because we always see is the social media stuff, the
Yeah.
highlights, and I post all the highlights. You don't see when
Sure.
your athletes are crying, stuff's not going
Sure.
well, when something tweaks, when they're like, oh man, I got this, and Worlds is coming up. And so I love reading about the triumphs, and because it seems like everybody has some serious stuff that they've had to go through to get where
Yeah.
they wanted. And all we see is the hand raised and the smile and the medals and the ticker tape parades. We don't see the other stuff. So anything I can read about those, it's just very inspiring.
Alex Hormozy, that coach, one of his quotes is that I can't. I'm going to butcher it, but essentially, when you find someone who's really a champion at something, he also finds a person that had been broken so many times on the way up that he finally figured things out and was able to put it all together. You can't just go from zero to the top. There's so many times you get beat on the way up, so you can learn. You have a favorite superhero and villain?
Favorite superhero would be Wolverine, man. You knock him down, he heals, he comes back up.
Yeah.
He just keeps going and going and going. Yeah, he's one of my favorites, man. He's the guy that he'll put his claws out and he'll go after you and you'll knock him down and he'll challenge anybody, take on anybody. I think he's the man, and obviously, Hugh Jackman's done a hell of a job playing him with everything too.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Shout out to episode 51 with Kyle Maynard. I've been telling everybody on the planet to go watch or listen to that episode, and I don't know if you saw it. The guy's born, his arms stop at the elbow, and his legs stop at the knee, and that's how he was born. He went 0-35 in middle school and high school wrestling before he ended up nationally ranked. And when he's wrestling, he's not wrestling other handicapped folks. He's just wrestling people. Purple belt jiu-jitsu, same deal. Climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, 19,000 feet, and then this other one in Argentina was 22,000. The whole time in a bear crawl. I'm climbing 12,000 over in Colorado. I got the poles and everything. Documentary on ESPN, ESPY Award, bestseller book right in the dorm room. The dude was born with his arms only grown halfway in his legs. And he was on our show, episode 51. It was like, holy shit, man, I suck at persevering compared to this guy. And it was a true gift. So if you haven't listened to Kyle's story, go get it, man. It's awesome. What's your favorite lift?
I haven't. That's definitely. I'll get on that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. What's your favorite lift?
Favorite lift? Right now, it's the bench press because all my athletes are having such good success. My personal one as an athlete was the deadlift. That was when I pulled my 782 on a stiff bar, gold medal in the 2009 World Championships. I always wanted to be the best, and Mr. Conjan, the guy that started me off, was always preaching that I can be the best at something someday. And even though it didn't happen in wrestling or anything else, that was my gold medal. That was at the Worlds. That was something that I had earned. My coach called the right number. I even had a lot of guys that didn't think I was going to be able to pull it. It was funny. A lot of my teammates thought, that's about 5 kilos too much. It wasn't like 2.5, maybe 7.5 kilos too much. One guy, Dave Ricks, who's one of the famous powerlifters of all time, he thought it was 10 kilos too much.
Oh, wow.
And that was a big mental lift for me that my coach got me ready for. I didn't know what it was, and I was able to achieve like a lifelong goal without even knowing about it. He just put it on the bar. So deadlift for me as an athlete, as a coach, benching, because man, we're just rocking the bench and setting American records, and we just love it over here.
That's awesome. I think your favorite way to train is high volume, and it's true. If you can recover from it, that's absolutely fantastic. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, it was Dan Gable's growing up that you can never wrestle enough because you can always get better, and he put in there you can never lift enough because you can always get stronger. So I apply that to everything that I have, and I tell all my athletes that all the time, and whether they're wrestlers or not or lifters, I mean you can never do enough. There's always stuff that you can get better at. You can go visit this person. You can go train with this person. You can make the drive with me to West Side when Louis was around to go train with him. Sacrifice money a little bit, sacrifice a little of the average life of the average person. So I think you can always just, like he said, you can never wrestle enough because you can always get better. You can never lift enough because you can always get stronger. I just apply that to all facets of my life.
Yep. Jeremy, when people want to find you, physically or online, like how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, just any of my social media. It's Hartman Performance. Email is hartmanpt1@gmail.com. Just message me on any of the social media. Message me on my email. Come on down to Indianapolis, Bargersville, Indiana, little thing down the road, and you'll find some of the best athletes and the best powerlifters in the world that come down here and train. And I think it's the highest compliment. And I'll help anybody out, Jim. It's like and it's like Lucas said, those kids that weren't going to be this, and all of a sudden they're starting on this, and now they're doing great things. It doesn't matter who I'm working with. I'm going to make sure that they get to be their best, and the parents and the people and the athletes around me know that. I think that's why I got a long-standing thing like you guys do with your athletes that come back and visit me. I've got kids from Lucas asked me about my first job at Fort Wayne Carroll in 2006. I still got athletes that they come up for the annual HPT gathering, and they have to get introduced to some of my other athletes. They're 35 years old with kids, and they'll still come down and train, and they'll get prepped for it too. So I just think that's awesome. So anybody, anytime, if they're interested in training, really want to push themselves, that's what I'm here for.
Bargersville down a little bit south of Indianapolis. Jesse Dale lives down there now. He was on one of our podcasts. He runs Macro Millionaire, and he just earned his pro card in bodybuilding maybe 2 months ago, 6 weeks. Right down there in Bargersville. And then one of his side gigs is he runs Professional Smoke because he likes bourbon and cigars. So I don't know if you know Jesse, but I'll have to connect you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Love meeting good people that are working hard.
For sure. So that's how we get a hold of Jeremy. If you guys want to get a hold of us here at Athlete Builder, it's athlete-builder.com. Be on the lookout. My book has set off for pre-sale, so you can get it athlete-builder.com. There's a link there, or it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and the title is Athlete Builder, the blueprint for building champion athletes. Shout out again, Lucas, for qualifying for the American Open, and breast cancer is going on right now. It's going on all the time, but it's highlighted more in October. So go to our website and click the link so you can help make an impact with breast cancer with the unbreakable boobs. So Jeremy, Lucas, again, thanks a lot for the time. Thanks for the gift. Thanks for all the knowledge. Great having you on. I like connecting with you guys. I always get way smarter. So it's my continuing education every Monday. So appreciate it.
Jim, one more thing. This is something that's important to me.
Yeah.
I want to hear, this is when you asked me about my favorite stuff, and when I got to hear your story when I first got introduced, if you could just in, under a couple minutes here, talk about, how your kids inspired you, how you started your gym business in your garage, and how you grew, because you have a son doing great things at Division I level. But sure. I think people need to hear that story because it's an inspiration of, how well you built your facility out there. But if you couldn't just under a couple minutes, let your people know where you started at, how you got inspired, and how you build a great business, and obviously you're working on this podcast to build this up.
Thanks for taking the time to ask that and pointing it out. It's it's humbling, and this wasn't my background, and I always wanted to be an athlete, so that was always the deal. And I know every time my mom hears me say this story, I'll get a phone call, and she'll be like, "Hey, we did our best. Like, my parents love me. They did great. Right?" And we had whatever we had financially or knowledge wise. Like, my parents didn't know how to make athletes. And my dad was a lawyer, my mom was a school teacher and math teacher. So when I would ask them, how do you get better at or stronger to play football or basketball, they would say, "Hey, I don't know, push-ups." That's all I knew. So I was never really that great. And I go to St. Ignatius High School. The last 25 years, they have over 50 titles, big school titles, like over 50 in 25 years, right? People talk about 3 or 4, which is huge. They have over 50. And so if you're not good, you're definitely not playing and stuff. You don't get to play unless you're great. And so just a lot of missed opportunities I felt, and it was part of my identity that I wanted to be physical and compete. And I was 6'2" and 1/2 and 190 pounds at 14 years old. And I'm like, I should have something I could put together, but this never really happened. And I was like, missed opportunity. Started playing racquetball because that's all that was left. It wasn't even a school sport, and it was at a local gym, and I was playing there. And I'm like, well, need some lessons. I need someone to teach me. I found a guy, so I would earn some money, and I would pay him, and I would get better. And I started winning tournaments. And then Purdue had a travel team. I was on that team, and I was playing, and I just kind of self-taught. Always wanted to be athletic, but was good at math, and ended up in the business world, banking and finance. And I'm in my early mid 30s, and I'm just playing catch with my kids in the yard. I had a big German Shepherd, and I'm 300 plus pounds. I'm not 300 pounds and strong. I'm 300 pounds and fat. Like, I'm fat. I'm out of breath climbing 12 stairs. I'm eating all the time, and when you're out in the financial world taking people out, you're buying all these expensive meals. There's drinks and there's dessert, and so you're just constantly entertaining and selling. We're doing great financially at the banks and stuff, but physically I'm just like how my dad looked and what I saw growing up, all these bad eating habits. My dad was 58 when he got sick and 62 when he died, and he never even saw the gym. My gym opened in 2013. He was dead in 12. He didn't see any of his grandkids grow up. And I'm like, I'm playing catch in the yard, and I trained my German Shepherd Max, who was an outstanding dog, to go get the ball whenever it was a bad throw, so I didn't have to chase after it because it's extra calories and work. Like I don't want to be out of breath. And I'm just playing with Jack, my oldest, and Maddie and Sam were there too. Sam's always climbing a tree, and Maddie's probably yelling at Sam for climbing a tree. And I said, "Hey, Jack, what do you want to be when you get big?" He goes, "I want to be an athlete, Dad." And I thought about that, and I'm like, "Yeah, so did I." And I thought I had no idea how to do it. And now I can't even lead my kids to be healthy, let alone a good athlete. I can't even lead them to be healthy so that the next generation can leave the place better. My impact on the world is a negative in that piece. Like, you grow up around alcoholics, you're an alcoholic. Well, my kids are growing up learning how to be unhealthy. And thankfully, working at JP Morgan, it's like the NFL for banking, humbly speaking, but it is. And unless we hit some enormous numbers year after year, your whole team either gets paid a ton of money or you get canned, just like in the NFL. And our team brought in a ton of money, but it still wasn't good enough. And they're like, "Hey, it's probably time for your whole team to go." And I'm sitting around, I'm like, "Hey, you know what?" Because that last year and a half I was at JP Morgan, I started at the bottom, like going for a walk, P90X. Like, I'm doing P90X, just trying to move, figure some things out. Then I did some group training downtown at NIFS. I had a good coach just teaching me some basics. And then went to CrossFit and I started learning things. I'm like, well, there's this. And then I brought on a coach at my own gym who knew all about powerlifting and speed training with Parisi School. I'm like, oh, I can learn this. So then it was just one certification after another, trying to learn more and more. And I like Chad Coy's approach. He makes sure he gets one certification every year. He's always adding that knowledge. So I just, not epiphany, but I'm like, you know what? I'm getting out of the financial world. I want to put my resources. I'm going to start in the garage and learn some things. And I'm going to start training people for free, right? And after I had these certifications, I started with neighbors and other kids, and I started training them. And I thought about having, working in mortgages and investments again while I'm building my own business. And I'm like, you can't do that. You got to be all in, because if your toes in somewhere else, then you're not really committed, and you have an out, and you're not going to commit. So I'm like, I'm gonna push at this until I'm told I can't. And so I go get a 10,000 square foot facility right off the bat. I didn't start with 1,500, 2,000. Now, luckily, Plainfield was cheaper, square footage and all, but I'm like, this is it. I wrote a business plan from my book from MBA school at Purdue. I went around to some of my old clients at the bank and said, "Hey, can I borrow some money?" Paid an enormous percentage, 14% interest rate plus 3% of revenue. 3% off the top of revenue. 14% interest plus 3% of revenue. Fuck. But I have nothing. I put $5,000 in. I have nothing. I had to borrow all that money, and there's no way a bank's going to give it to me. So I go out and buy the equipment. I'm like, you know what? All in or not at all. I got my car repossessed the first year. Sometimes I'm buying gas or food. There's times where utilities get turned off and then turned back on. All the kids' clothing was bought from Goodwill, and their Christmas gifts were from Goodwill or some cheap little thrift stores. Those first 2 years. And what was really tough is that first this January, when you're hoping for that influx of athletes because you're trying to make some money in 2014, that's the one time it hit a fucking blizzard and the governor shuts down the state. Said you don't go. So that first January, no one came in. So now it's week 2 in January. All the New Year's resolution people, they already quit, right? Because they never started. And I'm like, instead of bringing people in, I had a loss. And I was like, oh man. So then turned some things around and I just started reading more. So I was constantly reading 2 things or talking to people about 2 things. I'm either going to read or talk to somebody about how to coach people better. And I'm read or talk to somebody about how to be better at running a business. And you kind of just suffer for like 5-6 years. So that in year 12, people are like, oh, Jim, it's so easy. You have all these athletes and all these coaches, and you keep pushing them like, oh, man, what do you do all day? You probably don't do much, do you? I'm like, no, I'm still doing the same 2 things all the time because I don't know any other way because you're only here once. You're only here once, right? Got to go now. Whether you're an athlete or a coach or a husband or a priest or a school teacher, whatever. Just go now and get it done. And because at some point you're gonna look back and be like, well, shit, I wish I would have. Or if I would have, well, don't give yourself any of those if I would have outs. Fuck all that shit, man. Go. Go. Like, and if you get hurt, you get hurt. You go get bankrupt, you go bankrupt. But no one's gonna fucking die from it. So just go. So that's how I get wound up, and that's my story, and that's why we have this podcast. I want to expand my reach.
You didn't tell me all those details, man. That's even better to hear. Like, you just told me about your son and the inspiration and starting off and train the neighbors, and you kind of like, we chat a little bit, at your gym, and man, that's awesome to hear all the details and what you may be able to do and how you keep expanding your business. So that's even inspiring to me. So thank you for sharing your story on that.
Oh, you're welcome. That's why I do it, and it makes me happy to do it. So a lot of unmet needs, thankfully, that can make an impact now. Yep.
Absolutely.
So, all right, fellas. Happy Monday. Good stuff. Go out there, keep crushing, and win the day. All right?
All right. Sounds good.
See ya.
All right. See you guys. Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate you guys.
Okay. We're definitely past the time, but it's still saying recording, but my thing that says continue to record, I can't get it to stop. Perfect.
Just let it run, baby.
Right. All right. So Luke, even if I just hit, leave and we all stop, then we should be good, right? Or end session for all?
Yeah. End session for all.
Yeah, so all right. Hey Jeremy, man, appreciate it so much. Selfishly, if I send you a link and you check some things out on my book, if you just check it out, and if you find it useful at all, pass it on to other coaches and athletes. And if not, tell me why, and that way I can make it better. It's open for it's open for pre-sale right now, but I'm just trying to spread the word about the book and make an impact. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there you use it on Google for Google reviews and all that stuff too?
Yeah. See, it's not, you won't have it in your hand yet, but but you can order it and it'll be here around Thanksgiving. So,
what's the link you're sending me? To the book?
I'll send you the link to Amazon or the Barnes and Noble, and you'll have like information about it, and you can order it if you want.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Awesome. Definitely, Joe.
And then I'm going to follow up with you about Mississippi State or Ole Miss nutritionist Pam.
Pam Bartz, Mississippi State University.
Yep. And then we haven't had maybe that Rich Carlson, if you don't mind, that'd be great. NCAA All-American, top level military soldier, team member for wrestling. That's amazing. So, Rich and Pam, is that cool?
Yeah, Rich is. Yeah, he's actually. So we're taking a break right now. I think we put a lot into this last Olympic trials. Unfortunately, we came up short, but he's actually going to Ranger School right now, so I'm training him for that.
One of my guys, we trained him for Ranger School, and he made it through. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah, Rich has got a great story.
I can connect you with the Ranger and to network, but also kind of learn about earning his tab and what that's like. I'll send you guys. I'll send you Coy. Gotcha. And then
is there anybody else? Go ahead.
Similar to you, getting on stage and making an impact. If you know other places where I can make an impact, whether it's schools or Anything else? Keep me in mind. I want to speak to people about, I guess my shtick is the process, hunting for the process, finding your competitive advantage and your limiting factor, and building your process every day. And the three things for your head and the three things for your body. And so if it's training, all right, I'm either going to train you or point you in the right direction there. But what is people's process? What's their process for maximizing their nutrition, their recovery, their sleep, their hydration, their mindset, their knowledge of their sport? So any stages where I can make an impact and speak, keep me in mind.
Is there anybody else you're looking for your podcast in particular? Any
I would say
certain
we have a high percentage of strength coaches, a smaller percentage of actual athletes that lived it. So college or pro athletes in multiple like different sports, could be anything, tennis, volleyball, soccer. That way, there's a smattering of basketball. I don't know anybody in basketball. Because we coach them, but we ask the athletes, what's it like to live it? How do you balance that with your family? How do you balance all the training, how do you deal with the anxiety of being on the court or being on the field? So those kinds of athletes and coaches, we haven't had as many on yet, so that'll be a little bit different focus. That'll be good.
Okay, let me put some thought into that. I'll shoot you maybe some good people that would be a good person to have on here.
Also. Okay. Anything we can do to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want any other strength coaches at all too? I said you got a lot of them.
Well, we would. 3 people have recommended me to Ed Cohen, and he hasn't returned the call yet. But I think at some point he might, because I think enough people will say, "Hey, take Jim's call."
I'll talk to him with Swiss. We'll send him out there.
That's just a selfish thing, because you just know what he's what he's done, and what impact he's made too. And I like the stories too. I like not just the nerd stuff. I like the stories about training at West Side or people that are in Ranger School, what they go through. I like the stories. It gives you context of how they persevered. I like the persevering over fears and setbacks. That's probably my favorite.
Well, Jim, believe it or not, as good as a lifter as Ed was, technical coach wise, I think he's just as good, if not as a better coach than he actually was as a lifter. When you put him in a set, he thrives not on PowerPoints. He thrives on fixing technique and stuff.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many injuries he's fixed on me or my athletes. It's just amazing what people don't realize. Like, he's a great lifter. He's always got this good name, but he's actually one of the best technical coaches I've been around. I can point out and figure out shit just by watching the video. And I go to him every other week.
When you're around true experts in their field, you can actually feel it. Like, we had my own summit class this summer, and everybody had their PowerPoints, presentations, everything was fine like that. And Dr. Klutwijk came in with a whiteboard and a marker, and he's the knee doctor for the Colts. He's on international boards for ACLs. Like, the guy just knows it. And he could draw everything, and he knew the statistics by memory, whether if you use a cadaver or you use it from your other tendon. And there wasn't anything he didn't know the answer immediately. But it's just knees, right? So he's great at ACLs and MCLs, and patellas, meniscus. But other than that, not great. But you don't have to be. But in terms of that one piece, man, fuck, you're around someone that's like you said, not knowledgeable like Ed. It's awesome. And you're just like, he's sitting there with a whiteboard, and people are like, oh my God, that guy knows everything about it. Everything. And you sit there just writing as fast as you can. It's fun.
Yep. You might want to look into Jesse Ackerman. He's at the University of Florida right now as a strength coach.
Okay.
But Jim, you'll like him because he's got a story like ours. He was a high school strength coach at his old alma mater. He was at Division III John Carroll.
Oh, yeah.
He went to Iowa State, University, Texas, Florida. Got fired when he was at Will Muschamp. Was a special ops strength coach, and then got in with the Atlanta Falcons, and then went to the Super Bowl with the Falcons. Took the New England Patriots in overtime.
Yeah.
And then he was in the XFL for a little bit, and then he's back at the University of Florida, and he's in an interesting role. He's not the director of strength conditioning. He is more overseeing everything now. So he's he's a strength coach, but now he's in a consultant position for the University of Florida Gators football. So he's not the director. He's not an assistant. He's the consultant for it, but he's got a great story of him coming. He was on Dave Tate's podcast too, and He was a Cleveland guy. He went to Catholic high school.
Yeah.
Played at John Carroll University, and he's made his way up. But he's been, like I said, NFL and all that. But he's got a pretty cool story, and just a lot of knowledge from top to bottom. He's been around so many gurus and everything else. He's at the University of Florida. He's one of my good friends too.
Awesome. I'll follow up with an email tomorrow about these names. And I like Lake Catholic quite a bit because that's where my sister went. She couldn't go to Ignatius because all boys and all, but
Lake?
Yeah, she went.
Yeah.
My sister went there for sure. Yep.
Right. Ohio, baby.
Love it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll say this, being someone from not Ohio, every person I was a groomsman at my best friend's wedding. He's from Ohio, Toledo specifically. Everybody from Ohio is just all about Ohio.
Oh yeah.
Just, Ohio, baby, Ohio.
Oh, the Ohio State fans.
My 1 month internship with the Cleveland Browns.
Oh
in
man.
2006. My 1 month internship, 6 weeks, whatever it was. In 2007, that was a winning season.
Oh wow.
So I give myself credit for that 6 weeks I was there.
Hell yeah, you do. Hell yeah.
I those mirrors, and I vacuumed that floor, and I washed those equipment for the first 3 weeks like nobody else, man.
Right.
Did you learn anything?
I got called the best intern and the one they've ever had. There wasn't a spot on those mirrors. There wasn't a bench that wasn't wiped off properly. And then I actually got to start working with athletes after 3 weeks when they started trusting me a little bit. So it was fun.
That's awesome. Good for you.
That is the worst part about internships.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I was under Milo Tom Lozinski because Buddy Morris got fired over there, and I was under him. And again, the reason I got it, Louis gave a call for them. I was just another fucking resume got sent in. Right. I had a buddy there, and Louis called Tommy for me, and that's how I got to go in the Cleveland rounds. Honestly, there was hundreds of applicants probably, and he didn't even know who I was until Louis called me, so let's chat. Easy as that.
Impact.
Nice. Louis called me. Let's chat.
Yeah, it was really like, I don't know who you are. I guess your resume somewhere. I don't know.
Well.
Yeah.
Well.
Nice.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks so much, man.
Lucas, nice meeting you, man. Jim, we need to be in touch more often, man. I know we're busy, but
I agree.
Connect soon.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys.